Hi, I'm Nafisa Kabir, and I am reporting a brief overview of Curveball and the Iraqi War. Okay, so our main guy, Rafid Ahmed Alwan Al-Janabi. Who was he? Better known as Curveball, but this is a little bit about him. So he was a chemical engineer, a mobile biological weapon laboratory employee, and had extensive knowledge about the Iraqi WMD, or Weapons of Mass Destruction program. Or did he? No, he absolutely did not. So the truth of the matter is that he actually studied chemical engineering, sure, but he ultimately failed in it. Where he did work was the Babel television production company in Baghdad, which was owned by the son of Saddam Hussein. So within this company, he actually got caught doing a little bit of money laundering. And so he was seeking refuge in Germany. And so his whole story is a lot more complicated than a simple true or false. So let's get into it. Okay, so bottom line up front, a series of preconceived notions enabled the intelligence community to selectively believe all evidence that favor their specific belief that Iraq had a budding and persistent nuclear weapons program, despite all the evidence to the contrary, ultimately leading to the announcement of war against Iraq. Okay, so the overview of failures, the intelligence failures, these are the main failures within the curveball story that ultimately led to the Iraq War. Okay, so the tendency of analysts to believe that which fits their theories, poor asset validation by human collection agencies, and inadequate communication between the intelligence community and policymakers. So depending on which CIA chief you ask, the overwhelming notion was that everyone in the chain of command knew exactly what was going on, despite the doubts regarding Curveball's reliability to begin with, not having been forwarded to policymakers. The analysts working on this situation simply did not assess the information that didn't serve to confirm their predetermined beliefs. The analysts were very quick to jump on the secret intel that they tactically acquired from German intelligence and became overly certain that Iraq possessed WMDs. They were just missing the proof, and here it was on a silver platter in the name of Rafiq. Okay, so let's talk about confirmation bias. All right, so the influence of assumptions. All right, the intelligence community considered Rafid, like I mentioned, as a means to an end. He was the information that they were so desperate for to prove their preconceived notion that WMDs were still very much a thing in Iraq. The intelligence community had noted that it had no reliable intelligence to indicate resumed production of biological weapons, but assessed that in the absence of inspectors, Iraq probably, most likely, why not, would expand its biological warfare activities. Why? Because we, as the United States, probably would have done the same if we were in their boat. So these assessments were ultimately colored by the community's early underestimations of Iraq's programs, basically misattributing evidence where it really didn't mean as much as they wanted it to mean. Its lack of reliable intelligence and its realization that previous underestimates were due in part to effective deception by the Iraqis. So these colored assessments, right, excuse me, just to feed US suspicions, a foreign liaison service began. So this is essentially how it all started, right? So to feed US suspicions, a foreign liaison service from Germany began to debrief the United States on Curveball, or Rafid, passing information to the Defense Intelligence Agency's human services, like myself, regarding biological warfare agents. Feeding off the resulting groupthink, the community asserted that Curveball must be telling the truth, and Iraq must be hiding weapons of mass destruction. Okay, and so how did a suspicion like this become just a widespread presumption? Following the Gulf War, the intelligence community learned that Iraq's nuclear weapons program went beyond any previous intelligence assessment. So when they discovered in the early 1990s that Iraq had successfully concealed a sophisticated nuclear program from what we consider the best intelligence community of any one nation in the world, is quite the shock. US intelligence was definitely not going to let that happen again. So burned by the experience of being wrong in 1991 and just convinced that Iraq was bound to restart its programs, analysts simply dismissed indications that Iraq had actually abandoned its prohibited programs by chalking these indicators up to Iraq's well-known denial and deception efforts. Quite the mistake. So let's talk about validation. What is validation? Okay, so validation is when an analyst or a collector or literally anyone evaluates the credibility of reporting. So is the person, whatever they're saying, is it true? How do we evaluate that? We corroborate that reporting, okay? We review who it is that is doing that reporting. Who are we getting this intel from? We authenticate the sources bona fides. Like, are they really at the echelon of information that they are claiming to be at? Do they have that access that we need? We test the source's reliability and motivations. Why are they telling us all this information? Why are they defecting their own nation or whatever it may be? And we have to ensure that this source is not compromised. Essentially, whose information are we receiving? Are they under threat? Is this, sanctioned information? That kind of deal. Okay, so what did defense human do in this instance? Nothing. We did absolutely nothing. A defense human official explained to the commission staff of the Senate Committee of Intelligence that defense human believed that it was just a conduit for Curveball's reporting, and that it had no responsibility actually for vetting Curveball or validating his information. In defense human's view, asset validation is solely the responsibility of the analyst. And so in their judgment, if the analyst believes information is credible, the source has automatically been validated. And that, it could be a little bit problematic to think, because analysts are basing their judgments off of the information that we give them that they think to be credible, because that's our job to make sure that their intel is credible, not incredible, but maybe incredible also, All right, so last up, communication breakdown. All right, so it was judged that Iraq has transportable facilities for producing bacterial and toxin biological warfare agents. And this judgment was attributed to multiple sources. But in reality, Curveball himself provided approximately 100 detailed reports on the subject, while the additional 2 or 3 sources were from 2 or 3 other individual reporters with 1 report each, right? And so the presentation of the material is attributable to multiple sensitive sources. However, it gave the impression that the support for the biological warfare assessments was much more broadly based and was in fact the case. A more accurate presentation would have allowed senior officials, policymakers, to see just how narrow the evidentiary base for the judgments on Iraq's biological warfare programs actually was. All right, so what was the end result of all of this? I'm going to show you this 4-second video, okay?
What you will see is an accumulation of facts and
facts. Okay. So, what was the fundamental issue? So once the Curveball was ultimately discovered and all of his lies uncovered, there was no system in place to recall his reports, nor any other reports created from his information. It is extremely difficult to walk back intelligence papers or briefings to policymakers, as there's really no way to know which pieces relied upon what information. Ultimately, what is received is just the final conclusion, right? And you can say, oh, X, Y, and Z source, but where did those sources come from? So what are steps taken to mediate this in the future? All right, so first off, ensure that reporting from a fabricating source is reissued with a fabrication notice, or that a recall notice is electronically attached. Basically, on each document, each report is like, hey, there's a little bit of issue here, take note, take heed, but maybe the rest of it is still valid. But we already published it once, we're going to publish it again, and it's going to just have that warning on there. And the second step is that the director of the CIA established or is establishing still community-wide procedures to ensure electronic guarantees of, the previous plan, like I just mentioned. All right, so to recap, the intelligence community's strong prevailing assumptions about Iraq's intentions and behavior ultimately is what led them to think that Curveball's reports were enough evidence to say with high confidence that Iraq's offensive biological warfare program was active and more advanced than it had been even before the first Gulf War. And the intelligence community put a lot of faith in a single source that they couldn't even talk to directly. They had to talk to him through a liaison via German intelligence. And they did all of this without telling policymakers that their decisions and judgments were based on this one unchecked source. And that's the long and short of it. One of the biggest intelligence failures in the United States in the past 100 years. Thank you for listening to me today, and I hope you all have a wonderful day and learn something from this. Thank you so much.